Okay, awesome. So here we go. So peaks and pits of investment property ownership, long-term and short-term rental. So we are going to cover a little bit of both. Okay. We actually, it's not going to let me do this either. So nice. We did this already. The icebreaker. Thank you for participating. I want to talk a little bit about me, just really short and sweet. Did you guys all get the message? One more thing. Did you guys all get the message that this is recording? Because it should have asked you for permission. Yes. Awesome. Perfect. Thank you. Okay. So I'm a money coach and a certified cash flow specialist. And what that means is I help people with their cash flow, and the goal is to maximize their money. I was a financial educator for close to 20 years, and it is Financial Literacy Month. So this is my jam. I love it. I love helping people with their money. I'm also the owner of a long-term rental in Port Hope, Ontario, and a short-term or Airbnb in Mont Tremblant. And I actually fell into these. I say I fell into them, but I did. It was accidental. If you didn't read my blog about this, it really happened because my sister, who was not into finance, not into numbers, decided she wanted to get into an investment property in Port Hope, and she wanted a partner. And so she called me, and it really wasn't on our radar. And here we are. So we bought the place in Port Hope. It went very well. So then what we ended up doing was also going to Mont Tremblant one summer, falling in love with the area and buying a property there. And so here I am with 2 properties, kind of accidentally. So I wouldn't necessarily suggest that, if I'm being honest, because I've learned a lot of things on the way. We've gotten very lucky. I've really enjoyed it, but I would have liked to maybe been a little bit more researched in my choices. I'm going to pass it over to Gretchen.
Okay, thanks, Angie. I don't know if people can see me. It says on mine, I'm viewing your screen, Angie. Are we good?
I can see you.
Okay. Okay, so I'm a mortgage agent with Mortgages by Gretchen. Pineapple is the brokerage. I've been a mortgage agent for 19 years, and I've worked with thousands of investors of all types, meaning short-term, long-term, developers, commercial, people converting properties into duplexes or triplexes. Right now, working with some people doing garden suites. So I got into specializing and working with investors about 9 years ago. I joined a team, and the team leader, she was heavily into doing that, and I was able to be part of a Rich Dad seminar on creative financing and attend events such as like the Wealth Hacker Conference, and going to different meetings over the years as well, like the Right Club, which is out of Burlington, Durham REI, which is here in where I am in Durham region, and just love working with investors. It's everybody, the passion, the support of each other is really exciting. I personally have done a flip, and I also am, as mentioned, am looking at purchasing a Airbnb type property in California. I'm American, born in Michigan, and my parents have a house in California. So that's why my interest is out there. And also right now adding a side entrance to my house to have an entrance into the basement so that I can rent out my basement. So yeah, I love investors and real estate investing.
Awesome. Thank you. So why buy an investment property? There are certain benefits that they can provide that you might not get another way. So they can provide a solid ROI. I say can because you have to do your homework in order to make sure that that does happen. And ROI means return on investment. Mine have been very good for me. They're a great way to diversify your portfolio. So I know with my sister, she wanted to get into a long-term rental because they are looking at building out their retirement. They're self-employed, and they didn't want to just rely on the stock market. They obviously have invested, but they also wanted to get into real estate. There's the potential for passive income. Passive is an interesting phrase. It is mainly passive. I'll talk a little bit about how you do need to do some work, but yes, on a month-to-month basis, you will have a lot of passive income coming your way. And personally, I love my vacation property because it provides me with tons of fun, lots of social benefits to having it. I have friends and family up all the time, and we just really enjoy having that property. So Gretchen, I think you were going to talk to this one.
Yeah, sure. So is it a good time to buy? Well, there are a number of factors to consider in answering that question for yourself. Housing prices at the moment have started to come down. It's become a more equal market, meaning it's not necessarily favoring the sellers like it was. It's starting to favor the buyers as well, be more equal market. There are a lot of people who are struggling, unfortunately, because of high interest rates and high cost of living, who are letting go of cottage properties or some of their rentals. So it's a good time now in terms of the prices. Plus, I really feel there's a pent up demand and people are waiting because they're concerned about things happening in the world and interest rates. And I think in the spring, there's going to be a lot more people in the market. So if you're in the market now, you're going to get an advantage. Even though interest rates are high, there's ways to help you still have lower payments. And I'll talk a bit about that. And also you can refi later. So if you do a shorter term, you can refinance it in a year or 2 years and get advantage of hopefully lower rates at that point in time. It is also a personal decision, such as Ange mentioning that she, wanted to have this vacation property. So that's a lifestyle choice. It can also be for personal reasons that you want that extra income. You maybe want to have a family member move into a property. So there's lots of personal reasons to do it. And to pick areas that work for you. Maybe you love the East Coast or you love the West Coast. And also you can adjust your location. I'm finding a lot of people, investors who were like, oh, I do all my investing in Pickering or in Durham or, a certain area. And they're just realizing, hey, I really don't need to limit myself. I can go and buy a property that's in Quebec, Nova Scotia. I can have a property manager. So there's lots of, people are opening their mind to the fact that maybe they do find it not so affordable where they live, but they can buy somewhere else in a different market. Do you want to add anything to that, Angie?
No, I think you covered most of it. I'm going to cover a few of those things down the line as well. So that was great. Thank you. I do want to differentiate between the long versus the short-term rental, just so people know what I'm talking about. So long-term rental is where you do intend to rent it on a full-time basis. You are giving a lease. You're going to get them to sign a lease. Here in Ontario, that means you are subject to the Landlord Tenant Act. I'm sure that the other provinces have a similar system. But essentially what that means is there are lots of rules and restrictions in terms of what you can do as a landlord and things that you need to follow. So we own a duplex in Port Hope and that is rented out 100% of the time. It was on a lease for 12 months. They're past the year. And so then it automatically goes month to month and we cannot do anything like kick them out, increase our rent by a certain amount. We're restricted by a lot of the rules. And some of those rules are actually really great. And some of those are very restrictive. And then the short-term rental is a property that you rent for less than 28 days at a time, which means you don't have to follow the rules of the long-term rentals and the landlord tenant board. They're typically listed on Airbnb or VRBO, or you can rent to friends and family, usually vacation type property. However, in some of the cities, it can be just, your regular condos, etc. And then we do own a townhouse in Mont Tremblant on a golf course because I'm a golf addict. Just had to throw that in there. If anyone's a golfer, I would love to go for a round. But yeah, so we do own a townhouse in Mont Tremblant. And of course, it's rented out short term, a lot less rules to those. But there are some other disadvantages for sure.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about qualifying for a mortgage. So if it's a long-term rental, you will have a lease, as Angie said, or they can use fair market rent. So an appraiser will give a report of fair market rent in that area. Rental income is used to qualify you for the mortgage because you have proof that you do have that rent, and it has to be a legal unit. Now that means in most cases that it has to be separate entrance, egress windows, proper fireproofing, self-contained separate unit. There are exceptions where some lenders will allow it to be self-contained, but not necessarily legal, meaning you may not have an occupancy certificate, or it might not be 100% legal by the city standards, but you maybe could still qualify to have it as a legal unit. The difference being, if it's totally not legal, like a basement that doesn't even have a separate entrance, you can't use rental income to qualify for the mortgage. The difference too then is the vacation rental Airbnb type of property The A lenders like banks, credit unions, what's called a monoline mortgage lender that give the best rates, they will not use income from a short-term rental. So if you say, oh, I'm renting it out for $4,000 a month, but I rent it to somebody different every other day, they don't actually want to know that or hear that, and they won't use that income to help you qualify for the mortgage. There are alternative lenders who will allow you to use some of that type of income to qualify at higher interest rates. If you don't need the income to qualify, that's great, because you don't really, you just say it's, I'm buying this as a second home or for personal use, or I'm buying it as a long-term. Maybe you start off planning to do long-term and maybe later you're switching. So, but ideally, if you don't need the income, we don't even worry about it. Border income is a different thing. I know that's not necessarily our focus, but just in case you're wondering, it's similar to Airbnb. If you're renting out a property to say, 6 students, A lenders do not like that. Alternative lenders will consider it, again, at higher interest rates. So they really want to see, 1 or 2 tenants, not 6 tenants. And they don't, if an appraiser goes and there's lock boxes on every door, they don't like that. So that's it. General mortgage qualifying applies just like with any mortgage, like in a home you're going to live in, which is credit scores. Ideally, they want you to have like a 640 or so credit score with Equifax. Your down payment on a rental has to be 20%. So on owner occupied, it can be as low as 5%, but not on a rental unless you live in it. So then that's an owner occupied rental, and you can have as low as 5% down. So like if it's a duplex and you're living in one of the units. So it's 20%. Sorry, that is not right. I made a mistake on my slides. 20% of purchase price. And if it's over 1.5 million purchase price, then sometimes they will say you have to put 20% down plus additional funds over and above. They want to see you've had those funds in your account for 90 days, or that you're using like a line of credit in order to get the funds you need. And then that's used in the qualifying. And then you can, in some cases, use gifted funds or partially gifted funds from immediate family, parents, grandparents, children, siblings. For income, it's like a normal mortgage in that if you're using work income to qualify, they will look at your guaranteed hours, or if you're part-time or non-guaranteed hours, they'll look at your 2-year average of your income. If you are self-employed, there are ways to use more income by showing bank statements, but at a higher interest rate and a lender fee involved. If you already own other rental properties, then they will look at including 50 to 100% of that income from those properties. And the one you're purchasing, it's 50 to 100%. The reason there's that range is it kind of depends on which lender we're using. TD Bank might say we're only going to use X amount, but if you can work with Scotiabank or someone else, that's the benefit of being a mortgage broker, is that I know policies from many lenders, so we try to fit it with the best lender possible for your situation. Debt ratios. So debt ratios, basically what that is, it's your mortgage payment, taxes, and heat divided by your income is what's called the GDS, and that can be 39%. And TDS is those same things. So your mortgage payment, taxes, and heat, plus any other debts you have. So let's say you're using your line of credit for the down payment. There's going to be a payment for that. So the total of those things divided by income can be up to 44%. If you have a 680 credit score, there are some exceptions made. If you're familiar with the stress test, you have to qualify for the mortgage. If we're dealing with best lenders like banks, you have to qualify based on the interest rate plus 2%. So, so right now with higher interest rates, it is a little harder to qualify. There are lenders who will look instead at what's called the debt coverage ratio, or they have a rental worksheet. And basically that's looking at the cash flow of your rental portfolio. If you only are buying one and you don't have any others, it's mainly that product, that specific one. So it can be beneficial that some lenders will say, we're okay that maybe you have some other properties that aren't cash flowing, but if this one is, we will consider lending to you. And again, if the ratios are high, if anything doesn't fit, there are alternative lenders who will often lend, and we try to find a scenario that can work. Or you can decide, well, it's not working right now, so maybe I am going to wait, or look in a different location. Interest rates right now. So based on today's rates, like the 3-year fixed, and the reason I'm showing the 3 years, a lot of people aren't doing the 5-year because interest rates are expected to come down in the next 2 to 3 years, or even the next year. So most people aren't doing the 5 years. So if you're doing a 3-year fixed right now for a rental, it's around 7.11%, or a variable is prime plus 0. It's about 0.5% higher than if you were buying an owner-occupied property, because it's a rental. The amortization, which means how long they spread the payments, is going to be, you can do lower than 30-year if you want, but most renters, people buying rental properties, do 30-year, and there are some lenders doing 35, 40-year amortizations or interest-only payments. And the benefit of that is when you spread it out over a longer period, the payment is less and it's easier to qualify for the mortgage. One thing Angie's going to mention, Angie, sorry, I keep going. I have another friend named Angie. Angie's going to mention is about taxation, because sometimes you can write off the interest, and so sometimes it's not as big of a concern of what the payment is as it would be on your owner-occupied property, where you can't write off the mortgage interest. Lenders do not give pre-approvals for rentals to hold the rate. However, and I'm sure other lenders will review the situation with you, so that when you make an offer, you're comfortable knowing whether or not you are going to qualify and what it's going to look like. They just won't hold the rate for you when it's a rental, unless it's an owner-occupied rental. Alternative lenders, as you see, like right now, the rates, it's actually not a whole percentage higher, but it is higher. They charge a 1% lender fee, even though you will have 20% down. And private lenders, if you're in a scenario where, like I just did a private mortgage for someone who was buying a rental suite, and none of the lenders wanted to lend to, not a rental, a garden suite. So it had a primary property and a garden suite, and it was in Welland, and the only lender that was open to lending on it was private. So you're looking at around 9% with about a 3% lender fee. Holding companies. So a lot of people, when they buy rental properties, consider buying them in a holding company name, numbered company, as opposed to their personal name, because of liability reasons and also taxation reasons. So that is something you will want to consider and discuss with your accountant and your lawyer as well. So definitely talk to whoever you decide to work with. I'd love to work with you, but whoever you're comfortable working with, do review what you're going to buy before you put in an offer. You want a condition of financing. I highly recommend a 5 business day condition, because you will need an appraisal. Obviously in some markets that's not always an option, or if you can even get longer, that's awesome. If you can get like 10 business days. You maybe will have a condition of an inspection, and ideally have about 30 days till the closing. Yes, maybe could close it faster, but 30 days is kind of what the lenders like. And you're going to have some costs. So you're going to have an appraisal cost, your land transfer tax, which is something you have on any purchase of a property. If it's 9 or more units, it's actually going to be commercial financing, so it will take longer and you will have higher costs. However, multifamily is often a great way to go when you've got more units, because you have much better cash flow sometimes. You're going to have a legal fee, which is around $1,900. So you get quotes from your lawyers, and title insurance. And then if you're dealing with an alternative lender, you're going to have the lender fee and broker fee sometimes. And I had another quick thought there that went in and out of my mind. Insurance. Angie, are we talking about insurance anywhere else or should I just bring that up now?
I was going to talk about it a little bit, but go ahead. It's up to you.
Yeah, just one quick comment about insurance is you really should talk to a home insurance agent before you make an offer, because I had somebody recently that assumed it would be fine. And then it turned out the property was over 100 years old and he was having trouble getting the insurance in place. And, you really want to deal with that early in the process.
Great point. Love it. Okay. First of all, Gretchen, you can call me Ange anytime you want. Just don't call me Angela because it gives me PTSD. That's what the police used to call me. So it's a thing. I'm just joking. No police involvement. Okay. So I'm going to talk about some of the monthly costs. I'm going to identify the differences between the two because I think this is where, as an owner, I have a lot more knowledge because of experience. So I didn't necessarily know all these things prior to owning both of these, but because of my experience, now I kind of can see the differences very clearly. So of course, with a long-term rental, you're going to have your mortgage, your property taxes, your condo fees if you have a condo. Utilities, oftentimes these are going to be covered by the renter as part of your lease. You would make it their responsibility because if you don't, they can do things like, I don't know, run the water to pay you back for whatever you did to them. Different things, right? So they can run up the bills. So oftentimes you are going to have that as a plus, rent plus utilities. Property management fee, we do have a property manager. The fees are in the range of about 8 to 10% for a long-term rental, and that they're covering a lot of things. So during COVID, we were so happy we had a property manager because they knew all the rules about rent deferrals, all of the different things that were going on because of the scenario. And so it puts the onus on them to keep up with those rules. And I, as an owner, did not really want to be doing that. They also collect the money. They also deal with any kind of forms that need to be given to your tenant if the tenant is late with payment or if there is something going on that needs to be dealt with. It's pretty hands off. If you pay your property manager, it's well worth the 8 to 10% in my opinion. But that's me. I'd rather pay someone to do the dirty work. There's also repairs and maintenance that need to be saved up for. Insurance, house insurance, you're going to deal with as well. And then vacancy costs. A lot of people don't factor in vacancy costs. This is going to happen when you have renter turnover, or if you are dealing with maybe some renovations. We had renter turnover and we had to reno our place because they had done some damage. And so there was a month or two there that we couldn't rent it. And so we had to cover all these costs ourselves. So you need to have a little bit of cash built up in order to offset that so that you're not putting yourself in a financial position that is not good. So this is the monthly cost for vacation rental. And what I've done here is I've just bolded the ones that are different from long-term rentals. So differences here. Your utilities, cable, internet, and streaming. When you are running an Airbnb or a short-term rental, those are on you as the owner. So you're paying for all those. Whereas in a long-term rental, the renter is. You might notice here, property management fees are higher for short-term rentals. Typically in the 15 to 20% range. I've gone through 2 property managers now, and one of them charged 20 and one of them charged 15. And I think that's fairly standard. That is on top of booking site costs. So you are also paying, excuse me, one second. You're also paying the site a fee when someone books. They tack it on to the customer's cost, but realistically, that's money per night that's not coming into your hand. So for example, Airbnb, it's an 18% service fee. Okay? So that's pretty hefty. Repairs and maintenance. I will say repairs and maintenance on an Airbnb have actually been less than on the long-term rental. And that's because it is not typically being used every single day. And oftentimes I've found that the Airbnb guests are actually quite, how should I put this? Like a lot of them want to do the laundry when they're leaving. I'm not sure what that's about. They don't need to do that. They've been very, very good with our place. I think it would depend on the type of place that you have, but if you have a nicer place and it costs them a certain amount of money, they tend to take care of it quite well, to be honest with you. Repairs and maintenance, same thing. Insurance. We did need to have an increased insurance for Airbnb. So we didn't need to have a higher liability for that. Seasonal costs. Didn't think about these when I was buying an Airbnb. But yeah, we have a wood fireplace at our place. We provide the wood. We also put up Christmas tree. We do all the decorations. We have all of these things going on. So that's additional costs. We provide supplies for guests, shampoo, dishwasher soap, all of the things. We are providing that. Coffee. Okay, so all those things add up. Cleaning costs. These can be quite hefty. To clean our place is $280 a pop. So we do charge the guest a portion of that, but we also need to pay part of that. We don't charge the entire amount to the guests. And then short-term rental licenses. So in order to rent short-term in Tremblant, you have to actually get a license, and you cannot be on the Airbnb platform without that license. They will not let you have your listing up there. And so they're kind of one of the first areas that started to do this license system, which is now rolling out in some other areas like BC, etc. And so it will cost you some money, well worth it if you can get yourself into that market. Okay. Some tax information. HST. So long-term rentals, when you're renting with a lease, you actually don't charge HST to your tenants, which is great for the tenants, but you're not able to recover your HST either. And what that means is, if you have costs and you're paying HST, it does not, you don't get those dollars back through an HST refund at the end of the year. With Airbnb, you do. So with Airbnb, once you make over 30,000 in revenue, you have to collect and remit HST. The platform does this for you. It collects the HST, but you are going to have to then give it to the government. The positive of that is that you get to claim back your HST that was spent in renting out the home. So an example for you is I talked about my cleaning fee being $280. That's before HST, right? So I'm also paying an amount of HST on that. I get to get that HST back at the end of the year when I am going through the HST process. So I can also get my HST back on property management fees. I can get it back on supplies and maintenance. And so it actually does bring quite a few $1,000s back into our pocket because we were able to do that. Income.
And just so you know, Valerie raised her hand. I don't know if you want to take that now or do you want to wait till later?
I can take it now. It doesn't matter.
It's okay. I can put it in the chat, but you kind of answered it. So when you talked about supplies, would this be inclusive of like furniture, like the actual setup of the home? So when you're
not
setting up the Airbnb,
any large, any large capital expenditures don't count. So like we put a hot tub in. No, we can't get our HST back on it. It's really upsetting, actually. No, I can't be that upset about it. But it's more the things that are directly related to those visits that they're making. So
okay.
Cleaning, all the coffee supplies, the property management, all of that stuff. But larger purchases, you'd have to check with your accountant, but a lot of them do not count.
Okay.
Good question. Okay, income. Hopefully you're making money, but income earned after your expenses. So you do get to expense a lot of the costs of renting out. With an Airbnb, just note, if you are using this as a vacation property for yourself, the expenses, you cannot live in it for 6 months of the year and then rent it for 6 months of the year and claim 12 months worth of expenses. So the expenses would be prorated to the amount of time that you are actually renting it out. So that is something to be knowledgeable about. I guess you are only going to be able to claim as many expenses as the number of nights that it is available for rent. But if you make money, you're going to be taxed at your marginal tax rate. So you do want to keep some money aside to pay taxes. If your Airbnb is booming, same with your long-term rental. If you're covering all of your costs, you are going to have to pay some taxes. So just watch for that. And then Gretchen already spoke about income from a long-term rental being used to qualify for the mortgage. So yeah, once again, one of the things I did note with I have a couple friends that have Airbnbs. They did not set aside the HST that they charged. They did not set aside any money for income tax and they got burned. So again, when this money's coming in, you want to make sure that you know if it is for tax purposes that you're keeping that aside. Things to consider with long-term. This is kind of my favorite section actually, because as an owner, I found some of these things out the hard way. Landlord tenant board coverage. There's not many rights for the landlord, at least in Ontario right now. It got really bad during COVID because of the wait times. So if someone is sitting in your house and it's a long-term rental and they're not paying, you're going to be out of pocket for many, many months while you were waiting for a hearing. I do believe it's getting a little bit better, but it is something to consider, that you really need to be worried about the fact that you are not necessarily going to be able to get them out really quickly if they're no longer doing what they need to do and paying you the rent. Okay? So that's something to think about. Increased damages and maintenance costs on the property. Yeah, we noticed for sure our long-term rental gets a lot more wear and tear than the Airbnb. Rental increasing the price of the rental. So the landlord tenant board, again, dictates the amount you can raise your price on your rental if the tenants are staying. So for example, with my tenant, they had a 12-month lease. They're staying, they're into about the 22-month mark, and we're allowed to increase the rent by 2.5% this year. And I believe it's the same for 2024. So that is well below the inflation rate. And also we all know that interest rates have gone up. So if you happen to have a variable rate mortgage as an investment for your investment property, then you are going to be feeling the heat in your cash flow. And that would explain why a lot of investors are thinking about selling and think that right now it's not great for cash flow potential. If you have gotten in when maybe you got in a year or two ago and the prices were very high, you're probably feeling the pinch cash flow wise. It's a long-term game. You do need to run your cash flow carefully before deciding. So we sat down at Starbucks. I know we're very professional. My sister, myself, our two husbands, and we ran the numbers, and we had quite a buffer because we bought in Port Hope, which was a really great decision. We did not buy in the GTA at that time. Prices were very high. We bought in a location that still had relatively good rents, but lower housing prices. So we ran all the numbers and we had good cash flow, and that's when we made the offer. But you shouldn't be relying necessarily on what you think is going to happen. You should be really running those numbers, because quite honestly, I had another real estate agent, they're not in this call, but I had a real estate agent tell me one of the places we looked at was a great investment. And when we ran the numbers, it was going to be negative cash flow every month. So you really need to run your own numbers, and you really need to do your due diligence. It was a beautiful property, but it just wasn't going to cash flow. So it's about, you're not going to be living in it probably. So it's about cash flow. Things to consider: vacation property. Ooh, it takes a lot of money to start it up. Okay, so it kind of depends. This is my vacation property on the side that I have in the picture there. It's my Tremblant townhouse. We were in the middle, but we got it furnished. So that's a big thing. A lot of times in some of these tourist locations, they will sell to you furnished. So that saved us a lot of money. I'm going to guess probably around $40,000 to $50,000. And that's my guess. Could be more. We did have to do photos, professional photos, staging. There was a lot of prep work, a lot more effort in general to get that Airbnb on its platform versus long-term rental. It was a lot more effort for us. With the short-term rental, your choice of property manager makes a huge difference. So we have gone through two. They charge different percentages, and the one that actually charged a lower percentage has booked our place, I would say 40% more than the alternative. So we switched property managers, and I would say our revenue is up 40% because of that. That's huge. So that's something you want to consider as well. You want to be interviewing some and asking them the right questions. And if you don't know some questions to ask, call me, we can chat. The other thing you want to make sure of, it says owner bookings. What I mean by that is, will they let you book your own guests? So my first property manager said, no, you're not allowed to book your own guests. I did it anyways, because that's the kind of rebel that I am. But the second property manager is totally fine with it. I can book as many guests as I want, and they will book any days that are available and open. That is a huge revenue difference as well, because then I don't have to pay the Airbnb fee, right? I can book my guests in myself, block the dates on Airbnb, and then I can give them a discount as well, which makes people want to come back over and over. So that's really nice. Don't have to worry about the landlord tenant board with short-term rental property. I already said there's less wear and tear on the property, and they also have your credit card if they book through Airbnb for a damage deposit. So if something does happen, you have that additional insurance through Airbnb that can be helpful in getting you back that money if there's any damage. I'm knocking on wood right now, because so far so good. We haven't had any kind of major damage at our place. One of the negatives to be considering right now is there are a lot of rules and regulations that are changing in regards to Airbnb. So the federal government and some of the provincial governments are really trying to blunt the use of Airbnbs because of our housing situation. And I believe that in some ways this is good, but in other ways it's going to cause a major shift in the Airbnb market. And so I don't know all the answers to this. I do know that in some of the tourist areas, they need the Airbnbs, and so they're relaxing the rules and regulations. So all I would say about this is your location choice is key, and you need to be doing your homework before you put an offer on something and making sure that you are going to be able to actually put that on the short-term rental platforms if that's what you're looking for. Also, with location being key, we decided on Mont Tremblant for a couple of reasons. First reason, it's pretty much a 4-season rental location. Great in the winter for skiing, great in the summer. It's like a mini Europe. So, and we still get quite a few guests in shoulder season. It's not fully booked, but we still have quite a few guests in our place. And so that was a very specific decision that we made. We also thought about going to Collingwood and Blue Mountain. And one of the reasons we didn't was because the price for the type of unit that we bought in Tremblant would have been double in Blue Mountain. Yet we can get the same amount of revenue per night that we would have been getting. So instead of paying that extra for the Blue Mountain location, we paid, I'll just say it, we paid $720,000 for our Mont Tremblant condo. It's 5-bedroom and 2,400 square feet, and we can rent it out for the same nightly rate. So financially, it made a lot of sense for us to do that. It's a little bit further away, but we actually prefer it anyways. And then the last point is you get to use it as a vacation spot for yourself, which who doesn't want a vacation spot, really?
Okay. I guess, are we doing question and answers first? Angie, because I know someone asked, Minerva asked a question of you.
Sure, let's see. Minerva, if they are keeping them, you do not have to, but you still should be claiming HST. You'll have to, are you claiming back your HST that you put into the unit? Yeah, you know what? We should have a chat about this because I had a friend, got you. Yeah, we should have a chat about it because I had a friend, he did this for a couple of years in Tremblant and he did not claim back any of the taxes that he put in. Thousands of dollars he was giving up by not doing that. So the platform was collecting his HST, it's QST in Quebec, so whatever, but they were collecting his QST and submitting it. And what ended up happening was that he ended up not claiming back the amount of HST he had paid on the supplies and the property management and the cleaning services. Good. Yeah, you want to, Minerva, the difference with HST is you get every dollar back. So it's not like it doesn't reduce your income tax. What it does is you can claim back your HST and get every dollar back. So if I paid $3,000 in HST on my cleaning, property management, and supplies this year, the government is going to give me back the $3,000 because it's considered an input tax credit for my business. So it's, we can chat about that if you'd like, but yeah, it's really important to do that. And it's good for you as the business owner. You get that money back.
Okay, and there was a question from Candace about, can an Ontario mortgage broker help people with out of province properties, or does the broker need to be local to the property? So the broker needs to be licensed where the property is. So I personally, I am licensed in Ontario. However, because within my brokerage, we have people who are licensed outside of their, we have team members licensed throughout the country. So I can work in tandem with someone else. So if somebody, wants to work with me or is comfortable with me or has worked with me before, I can work with this person basically behind the scenes. You're still dealing with me and they're doing some of the paperwork for licensing purposes. And then I can still do the mortgage in every province. And I've done most of the provinces. I'm pretty sure we can do Quebec. I have to double check about that. But some brokerages, like especially the smaller ones, they may not have licenses. Like they might be in Ontario and they may not be able to do out of province. So you'd have to ask that.
Gretchen, there's another question for you about HELOCs.
Okay, so Ha is asking, can you use an existing HELOC from our primary property for down payment? Yes, that's the most common way people are putting down payments on rental properties in general. They use a HELOC on their primary home. They may already be set up. And yeah, that's no problem. The only thing is that the payment on the HELOC is going to be used in your debt ratios. But it's definitely okay.
Awesome. Does anyone else have any questions? And feel free to come on the microphone if you'd like. There's a lot of information here. I'm not going to lie to you.
Well, I'll do my little chat, but
Sure.
yeah, people feel free to go in the chat or raise your hand. Yeah, so I would love to talk to anybody and do a discovery session and run the numbers, because that's really important in determining whether or not you're going to qualify. I generally, with people, I'll do like a screen share, because we normally, now everybody loves doing the Google meetings and stuff, and we do a screen share and I kind of go through, okay, well, what's your income, what's your debts, what's your, what's the income going to be on that property? If you own multiple properties, I can't really do it all in one sitting. We have to kind of, I have to gather a little information first, but happy to do that. My email is here, Gretchen@mortgagesbygretchen.com, my phone, Instagram, and no obligation. I just really like to help and also share any experiences I've had that might pertain to you.
Minerva, I see your hands up.
Yeah, so I'm in like lazy wear here. So so I just have some questions. It was very informative. Thank you so much to the both of you. My question is, so I have my Airbnb in Pickering and wanting to, I guess, arbitrage another one, but like you said, there's just so much changing right now that I held off on looking for another property in Durham that I can rent, with the understanding that I'm going to be using it for short-term rental. So with that, I just kind of feel like I'm going to stay away from Ontario. What's your, well, I guess because you have the one in Mount Tremblant, do you, I guess, well, my question is it possible, and I'm assuming it is because you have one in Quebec, to rent in other places where you're not the primary owner of the place? Am I making sense?
So you want to arbitrage it in Quebec? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Yeah. Do you know, like in the States or in Quebec, or
I
I can,
actually do not know that answer. I'm very honest when I don't know something, because
yeah.
I'm the owner and I actually have not heard of that specifically. Like I've heard of arbitraging, but not when you're not in the area. So I'm guessing you would go about getting a property manager and then renting the place and then using the property manager to short-term rent it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sorry, I
Okay.
can't help you with that.
What
No
does
worries.
arbitrage mean?
You rent someone else's property and then you are renting it out as an Airbnb. So essentially you are renting somebody else's property and then you are renting that out.
Oh, you're like subletting it.
Correct. Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a great
I think
question.
it's like an American thing. They do it a lot in America, in the States. And people were contacting me to find me a new property, like the short-term rental finders. And I just kind of held off when I knew, like, things changed in BC, and then I hear that, Pickering, the municipalities like reviewing things. So I was like, let me just hold off. But I was just curious. But you can do it if you're buying the property, is what you're saying, but to sublet a property.
I mean, I'm not sure what the difference would be in doing it here and during doing it there. Right now, what's happening in Tremblant is that, our Airbnbs are fine. We actually had to license them before a lot of other places did. They want the Airbnbs there mainly because they need them for the tourism, and there's a bit of a housing shortage there, but it's not to the same degree as a lot of these cities. So you'll notice a lot of the regulations are coming in because they want the housing available in the cities. So I would be a bit hesitant right now to myself to buy a place in a city under the assumption that I was going to be short-term renting. Personally, I would feel a bit risk averse to that at the moment. I feel better because it's in a tourist area and they need the housing. I do know that Whistler has also stated that they are going to keep the Airbnbs that they have right now, and they already had rules in effect that basically it's a condo or a tourist type development where they have their Airbnbs. So they're going to keep those rules in place, but they need the tourist housing, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really good info. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
You're welcome. HA asked another question for you, Gretchen. You're on mute right now.
Sorry.
No worries.
Yeah, so the question it was mentioned to refi after a year or two for a lower rate. How does that work? Well, I guess if you're getting a mortgage now, I'd say you might want to consider that shorter term, so a 2 or 3 year term, so that when you're up for renewal, hopefully rates are lower, so then you get the lower rate. If you're in a longer term, so let's say right now you're in a 5-year term and you're 2 years in, you will. So there are different options for sure to, depending on your lender, like increase your mortgage partway through and not have a penalty, or add a second mortgage, or add a new component to the mortgage without a penalty, in order, to maybe pay debts or those sorts of things. But it kind of depends on your situation. I'm not really sure exactly what you're looking for, but normally if you just break it and don't stay with that lender, you will have a penalty, whether it's a 3-month interest penalty minimum or greater. So I guess I'd have to know a little more to answer that fully.
Yeah, I think what was meant was about, like, if you buy right now because the prices are lower and you have to get a larger interest rate, in a year, can I refi and look at getting a smaller interest rate if necessary? And I think there's some options out there is what you're basically saying, and you'd have to see the full details.
Well, I'd say you might want to consider 1 year.
Yeah. Awesome. Perfect. Okay. My specialty is cash flow, so I'm just throwing that out there.
So then when it's up for renewal, you hope that rates are lower. Or
I think Gretchen is breaking up, at least she is for me. So I'm just going to speak a little bit about my specialty, which is assessing your cash flow. I will say that before we got into our properties, I did not think that we would ever going to be property owners. Again, my intention and my vision was not to be an investment or a real estate mogul, never. And so I will just say that the reason we were able to do that was by assessing and taking control of our cash flow. And that's kind of what I do as a job, as a money coach. And so I did put my link in the chat for anyone that wants to chat. Or if you just have a question about investment properties in general, I'm pretty much an open book, maybe more than my husband would like me to be. But yeah, you can have a complimentary chat and I'll talk about anything you would like in regards to money. And of course, I love helping others do this because I think it's really enhanced my life. So that's something that I like to share with others and pass along. So I'm going to stop sharing. And if anyone has any other questions, now's a great time.
No questions, but thank you so much. This was, like Minerva said, very informative. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Thank you so much to you both.
Thank you guys for coming. It's awesome to see people here. I threw my calendar thing in the chat too, but anybody wanted to? But yeah, thank you all so much. And thanks, Angie.
Oh, no problem. If anyone thinks of any questions as well, I'm going to send the replay out. If you have any other questions, you can just hit reply on the email. I will also include Gretchen's email information as well in that email because everything's coming from me. I'm just a control freak. So yes, I will include Gretchen's information, and any questions you have, let me know. And otherwise, thanks for coming. And if you want to book my Mont Tremblant Airbnb, you just let me know. Candace, I see your question. I'm answering it. I'm going to answer it for you.